Next on the agenda is public comment. Mrs. Jenkins, how many do we have signed up? You are not Mrs. Jenkins.
Hi, I'm Laurel Hager.
Hi, Laura.
There are 11 signed up.
All
Public
right.
comment?
This is Patty.
So each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak with a warning at 2.5 minutes. Laura, would you please call the first speaker?
Yes, Dr. Eric Nuttall, followed by Dave McCoy.
If you would come to the podium when your name is called, please. And be prepared, since we give the name of the next speaker, be prepared to come down when the
Yes.
speaker before you is finished. Good evening, sir.
Just to keep it going. Okay, it's my pleasure to be here tonight, and I want to thank the board for all of its great service and dedication to the important issue of water resources for the city of Albuquerque. And I don't think we have many more important topics than that to be concerned about. So my purpose here tonight is to speak in support of the Resolution 15-7 submitted by the Citizens Action Committee. I submitted my resume. I have 15 years of teaching at the University of New Mexico and the University of Texas at Austin. I'm a chemical and nuclear engineer, have consulted for all of the labs and many countries in the area of radioactive waste management. And I'm speaking with regards to the content of the mixed waste landfill and the experiments that Sandia conducted out there. I was also on the first DOE, Department of Energy panel in 2000 that was appointed to review that waste disposal facility and to make decisions ultimately in 2005. So I wanted to first start out by pointing out that there were two committees, one in 2000 and one in 2003, that DOE appointed. An important oversight that Sandia failed to mention was that they actually worked with radioactive fuel pins, the material that goes inside of a nuclear reactor. And they did this under a number of programs, which we believe probably continues today. Our information and this information provided by Citizens Action is all from Freedom of Information documents that were obtained and public records through Sandia reports. So it's not something that was created in some closet. So it's all documented, and that information will be submitted to you. It's important to note that high-level radioactive waste, which Sandia fails to recognize or admits to as being in the mixed waste landfill, is defined by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And I have that information. Is that 2.5 minutes? Wow. Okay, so very quickly, it's nuclear waste that has to be permanently isolated from the environment. And certainly the waste that they put out there and the experiments that they have done involved fuel pins. They were doing meltdown experiments to simulate 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and the various reactors that have had accidents. And so that's where that waste has come from. So is that my time?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Councilor Garduño.
Yes. Excuse me. Let me just hear at least the part that you're talking about now, which I think is the most important part, and that is the fact that this friable material is not being covered over, or not being dealt with as just being covered over. So could you talk about that specifically?
Yes, very, very quickly. Sandia has a number of dumps that are out there that were unlined. All of them leaked, including the Kirtland fuel spill, which you know extremely well. They've all leaked through the Vados, what we call the 500 feet of Vados zone. Sandia put large quantities of chlorinated solvents, that's why it's mixed waste, as well as radioactive waste, into the mixed waste landfill. The migration is without question. There's no example that they have or that we have anywhere in the country where the chlorinated solvents have not migrated down to groundwater. The radionuclides are migrating, and there's already evidence that the chlorinated solvents are down to past 400 feet into the vadose zone, or less than 100 feet from the groundwater. So it's on the move. We know they put in large quantities. Their chem waste landfill, which they did excavate, did leak all the way down. There was another landfill, a rad waste, that leaked all the way down to groundwater. So we have no doubt which way gravity works. And what happens with regard to transfer, a cap per se does not impact, because there's water that has been put in, and there's water from the sides that come into the system, and chlorinated solvents are 1.5 times heavier than water, and they sink. So both rad waste and chlorinated solvents will contaminate your groundwater.
Thank you, sir.
The next speaker will be Dave McCoy from Citizens Action.
Thank you. Followed by? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this resolution. The documents that we have obtained through FOIA fail to show many of the contents of disposals that went into both the classified area of the dump and the unclassified sections. Management documents describe canisters of high-level waste being disposed of in pits and trenches. These canisters came from nuclear reactor meltdown experiments, and there was also atomic bomb waste from nuclear weapons testing. These high-level nuclear mixed waste will require perpetual monitoring, and the land can never again be put to any other purpose. There's a risk of a major accident for the mixed waste landfill. There's already been 2 uranium fires that have occurred there. There's a possibility of further fires or accidents at the mixed waste landfill from smoldering or burning metallic sodium, or an airplane or drone crash at the mixed waste landfill with aviation gas involved. Long-term monitoring doesn't mean a thing if there is an accident or fire. If you think that can't happen here, just think WIP in Carlsbad or Chernobyl and Fukushima. WIP was in the middle of nowhere. There's no emergency plan for any accident at the mixed waste landfill. Consider the consequences of a fire and release of radiation to the area in this densely populated area. The Sunport Airport will have to be shut down. Planes can't fly in or out. Houses and vehicles of all types will be contaminated with cesium-137 and quarantined. Four Hills, Mesa del Sol, Pueblo, and Isleta Pueblo, and residents inhaling plutonium, cesium, and uranium dioxide. Tourism will shut down. Residents will leave with latent cancers. Realtors can't sell houses. Businesses will not want to locate here. Others will leave. There'll be worker exposures and deaths. Sandia and Kirtland Air Force Base may indeed have to be shut down. Clearly, the costs of excavation now are far outweighed by the tort and the costs associated with such an accident. This Water Utility Authority Board would be liable for being informed of these possibilities and not having taken preventative action. Sandia and Kirtland collectively bring in nearly $10 billion a year. The cost of a few $100 million for excavation are negligible. Robotic equipment and facilities necessary for long-term storage and sending the waste to burial facilities exist now. Sandia documents show that TCE and carbon tetrachloride were disposed of in quantities up to 7.5 gallons per disposal. Each disposal of that size is sufficient to contaminate 2.2 billion gallons of water. A Sandia documented employee interview states, "We used a lot of TCE and carbon tet."
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to ask the future speakers, please try to limit to 3 minutes. We do indeed have numerous speakers tonight, and we have a very long agenda. So I understand you have a lot to say. Would you please try to get it, condense it into 3 minutes? Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really have just a very simple question, Mr. McCoy. You had the opportunity to address this. Can you hear this?
No, it's very difficult.
I hear tremendous feedback, but it's amazing that you can't hear me.
I can now.
Okay. We've had the opportunity to hear some of your concerns, and you've had the opportunity to address this board. And I just wondered, and some people also have wondered, this Citizens CNM, what is their expertise? Why do you think we should listen to you folks?
Well, we've been looking at this site for approximately 15 years, since 2000, and collecting an enormous amount of data about it. We've worked with persons of Eric Nuttall's caliber, Robert Gilkison, who was a former hydrogeologist and geologist at Los Alamos National Laboratory, who's looked at the defective monitoring that was at the site. So we have seen data, thousands of disposal sheets that have not been presented before to any of these boards or even the New Mexico Environment Department. And we have great concern for what we have seen in these documents.
And I trust, and I've had the opportunity to talk to yourself and many of the other people with Citizens Action New Mexico, but I think a lot of people, for some reason, think that it's a group of just folks who have nothing else to do. And I wanted to set the record straight. That is very intelligent people who have the expertise to make these comments and to question the DOE and the New Mexico Environment Department.
Well, that's true. In 2007, we went to the EPA Region 6 and informed them that we believed there was defective groundwater monitoring. And subsequently, a report came out that confirmed those concerns. We could only attain that several years after they had written the report. But numerous of our concerns have been borne out by Office of Inspector General investigations. A document that we obtained was a tech law document from 2006 that talked about how the dirt cover itself would not be adequate to protect the wastes that were placed in the mixed waste landfill. So we've used both a strategy of legal efforts to obtain information and also to interpret a lot of that information to agencies and the public.
Thank you. And I thank you for your work.
Thank you. I want to submit,
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. The staff
Yes.
will hand those out. Thank you.
if you'll take these.
The next speaker is?
Willard Hunter, followed by Ken Shepard.
Thank you.
Yes, it's very difficult for us to hear you. It's like you're whispering.
All of us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Willard Hunter, and I'm the chairman of the board of Citizen Action, and I'm speaking on the same issue tonight. What I want to talk about is externalities. An externality is a very fancy word for a cost that a company or an organization incurs but does not pay, and then shifts those costs to somebody else, primarily the government. Some obvious examples of externality is Walmart underpays its employees, and the U.S. government has spent $1 billion or more a year on social services to Walmart employees. They don't pay them enough. It's an externality. Duke Energies has coal ash in ponds that leak and cause extreme environmental and human damage. Those are externalities. Midwest power plants spew noxious gases to the East Coast and cause extreme environmental damage on the East Coast. But what I want to talk about is Sandia Labs. Sandia Labs has some people call this facility a mixed waste landfill that we're talking about tonight. Some people call it a dump. It's more like a dump. What I want to call it is a nuclear cesspool. I want you to get the image of a cesspool because that's what is out there. This is unorganized waste that has been dumped in the ground over a period of years and years and years, and Sandia Labs has essentially ignored it. Basically, they have literally and figuratively covered it up. All they want to do is put a fancy cover on the top, and that's all they want to do. They want to do a little monitoring, but they don't want to really take responsibility for what's out there. And in the past, what I've been concerned about is what goes into the aquifer. All of that stuff, as Dr. Nuttall and Dave McCoy have said, is going down into the ground. But recently, with the work that Dave McCoy has done, we're finding out that there is high-level nuclear waste out there. And that creates a whole other serious problem. And Dave McCoy has identified it. And this is truly a nuclear cesspool. So basically, Sandia Labs, Lockheed Martin want to pass whatever remediation costs are on to the city, the state, and to the government. And it's going to cost billions of dollars if there's an accident. They can clean it up now if there's, and it's going to cost them several $100 million, but that's a small fraction of what the cost would be if there's an accident. So this nuclear cesspool must be cleaned up by Sandia Labs and Lockheed Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ken Shepard, followed by Veronica Cruz.
Good evening, board members. Ken Shepard here, Albuquerque resident. I'm here just to express my opinion as in I'm in total support of Resolution 15-7. My concerns are about the health and the environment of this city. Please understand this. This is long-term risk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Veronica Cruz, followed by Ernest Sturdivant.
Yes. I want to read this. Good afternoon, everybody. I want to say something in Spanish. Soy hispana, maestra de educación preprimaria, de educación especial y pedagoga, además de madre de familia. Y quiero dejar un comentario sobre mis preocupaciones y la situación inquietante de esta ciudad. Tengo aproximadamente 9 años de haberme movido a esta ciudad y desde la primera semana empecé a escuchar sobre la contaminación del acuífero, la contaminación en el aire producida por los laboratorios de Sandia y de la base aérea de Kirkland. También escuché sobre la contaminación en áreas enteras como Mesa del Sol y esta información la obtuve de personas especializadas con conocimiento exacto sobre la materia como el geólogo especializado Robert Gilkeson, el doctor Eric Nuttall, maestro de la Universidad de Nuevo México, David McCoy con experiencia en desechos y contaminación nuclear. Este es un gran país, promotor de derechos humanos que incluye en su constitución el deber y obligación del gobierno para servir y proteger a la ciudadanía. Y yo me pregunto, ¿en dónde y cuándo se cumple esto? Porque únicamente veo corrupción en el sistema y mucha indiferencia en las autoridades que desde hace 9 años yo veo seguimos estancados en el mismo punto. Considero que el 50% de la población que habita este territorio es de origen latino e hispano y tienen el derecho a ser informados en su propia lengua porque muchos de ellos no hablan inglés, o sea, ser informados en español. El no hacerlo yo considero que es falta de interés por las autoridades, quizás porque no representan un voto para su postulación, pero de cualquier manera es una discriminación y una segregación. Todos los habitantes de este estado y de las naciones alrededor del mundo tenemos derecho a consumir agua libre de contaminantes, ya que esto fue un tratado firmado por las Naciones Unidas y declarado para todos los países del mundo, en el cual Estados Unidos también firmó. Para concluir, quiero nada más preguntar si los señores representativos o representantes de las autoridades de Water Authority tienen familia,
Thank you,
o
Ms.
si
Cruz.
quieren o pueden cumplir con su deber haciendo cumplir la ley.
Thank you, Ms.
Gracias.
Cruz. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Gardino.
point of information.
Yes, sir.
Is there a possibility when it's translated or when it's transcribed that it be translated into English? Okay, because I think it needs to be a full record. Thank you.
The next speaker?
Ernest
I'm sorry,
Sturtevant,
lo siento.
followed by
Era una
Silvana.
pregunta nomás, solo quería ver que si cuando se traduce se puede poner entonces en el récord.
Oh, sí, yo presenté una traducción en inglés
Ah,
también.
bien. Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker is Ernest Sturtevant, followed by Silviana Diaz-Duville.
Hi, Ernest Sturtevant, thank you, taxpayer. I'm here this evening in support of the work of Dave McCoy and to reiterate and act in support of his work, and also to further impress the body that this is hard science from independent sources. This is not rabble-rousing by community members who don't have enough to do. It's especially important for the Water Authority to hear seriously independent sources, especially now that the NMED, via political appointment, is essentially no longer an arm of the public, but belongs to the Air Force. It's more important than ever for the Water Authority to listen to the independent scientific voices in the community that are working on behalf of the public to protect our water. Kirtland has a long, long history of acting in denial of any remediation that protects the public in Albuquerque. Once again, please listen to Mr. McCoy seriously. We fully support that effort. And if I may, just briefly on a personal note, given the light of the public discourse this week, thank Ray Garduño for all his years of service to this community and to tell him that he's already missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sturtevant.
Silviana Diaz-Duville, followed by Tad Nemiski.
Is this it? Hello?
Good evening.
Yeah, I was coming one form or another, somewhat disabled. I'm a member of CARD. I'm a long-time. Okay. My family has been here for generations, centuries perhaps, and it's not just about jobs that Sandia Lab represents. It's more than that. It represents the water, the earth underneath it, and the generations that will follow that perhaps will have to be the survivors of whatever transpires. Sandia National Labs is chock full of engineers and doctors, I mean, all kinds of smart people. Why in the world, and it's overseen by the federal government. This is a national lab, and it's in the state of New Mexico, the county of Bernalillo, the city of Albuquerque. There are environmental agencies that can bring them to bear, to put a leash on these, make them clean it up. I mean, that's kindergarten. You make a mess, you clean it up. They aren't doing it. And it's really, really toxic out there. You know, it is terrifying to think that they can have open burning of tremendously toxic material and bury a devil's brew of all kinds of horrible things, even combustible things, and cover it. Think it's okay to cover it with dirt layer. My cat in her litter box does a better job than that. This is just, this is not acceptable. You know, Mexico true, that's our slogan. It's going to be New Mexico truly radiated. It is time for us to take care and to see that our officials not be so terrified of losing the labs, to make them come into line. Come on, clean it up. You're welcome here. We need you here, but we don't need you destroying our environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ted Nabisky, followed by Robin Valkov.
Good evening, Mr. Naminsky.
Somebody left it? Oh. Ready? Mm-hmm. Thank you. My name is Ted Naminsky. Just for the record, everybody knows me. Not in front of me, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm a little bit from the subject, but it is on the subject. There's been a couple of years I tried to find out about water, Albuquerque, Bernalillo County Water Utility Authorities. What kind organization is it? It is government, private. I even spoke to corporation, State Corporation Commission. They won't tell me. I spoke to many executives from water utilities, same thing. No, we're not government. We're not private either. So anyway, doesn't matter. That's why right here somebody gave me, and that's everything about Bernie, 2016 for president. Well, here it says about what caught my attention, corporate role. Yes, water, Albuquerque, Bernalillo County Water Utility. It is corporation. Well, so, what I'm looking right now, well, let me read it. Bernie supports the United States Constitution, wants to break up the big banks. I'm not too sure if that's happened, when that's happened. Wants to invest in America, absolutely. Social Security increases, yes. Better Medicare, well, I'm satisfied. Fair trade for America, not corporate rule. That's exactly. We got government, corporate government, we got corporate private. It's all together, all big monopoly. they supporting each other? What about committed boards and so on together? Thank you.
Mr. Naminsky. Next speaker.
Robin Falkoff, followed by Elaine Hebert.
Would you call the name again, please?
Robin Falkoff, followed by Elaine Hebert.
Robin Falkov. Robin Falkov. Ms. Hubert? Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Elaine Hebert. Given that it's been 2 months since I last saw you, you might have thought I might be mentioning some things that are on the agenda tonight, such as item 9B, the goals and objectives, which are supposed to be reviewed and revised annually prior to the development of the budget, and which should be more than just a mechanistic aspect of operations and finance. They should be interim steps to completing the water resources management strategy. Do they? I don't think so. But you might have also thought I would comment on the annual operating plan, which is item 10, which projects that groundwater pumping is going to fluctuate once again with regard to surface water supplies. Water Resource Management Strategy B, the authority shall limit the use of groundwater except to meet peak demands or during times of drought. The first 4 months of this year alone, we've seen more pumping than we had the first 4 months in 2011. Are we satisfying that goal, or is it harder to meet those goals when you fluctuate with an annual operating plan such as we have? You might have thought I might have talked about the lack of an agenda item on the appointments of the TCAC. Last year, you were told that needed to fill those positions because they were going to undertake the reformation of the Water Resources Management Strategy. Slot has remained unfilled since last year. 3 others are over their time limit, and 1 more has only managed to hit about 50% of the meetings this year. I would suggest that until those positions are full, that the water resource management strategy not be updated. You might have thought I would talk about the lack of a water resource update. Yes, it's really important. We had a great presentation back in January. Since then, there has been a new discovery that we no longer have any credit water down at the Butte, in Elephant Butte, so we must deliver this year all of the resources. That's not in front of the agenda. How can you make an operating plan without having such information? And finally, Mr. Maestas left me with this chart, which I will give to the board, and what it says is that there are a lot of promises that have been made by this utility already to a lot of places such as other development agreements. 10 to 12,000 acre feet are represented right here. Last year, the water utility did not have sufficient resources and water rights and return flow credits to even meet last year's budget. So hopefully, before more promises are made, additional effort will be made by this board to discuss that, like the neighborhood coalitions have requested, that the water budget and all of the impacts of what is needed to be provided is in front of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hibbard.
Steph Verchinsky.
Let's see, I don't know who's the chairman today. Is it? Oh, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Verchinsky. Just like to speak a few minutes with regards to glyphosate, which is a strong herbicide, pesticide. And Monsanto has even patented it as an antibiotic in 2000. In 2013, an MIT study found that it had negative impact on human health and inhibits enzymes for detoxification, inhibits vitamin D synthesis, and drastically alters gut microbiota. And it likely contributed to bowel inflammation, obesity, neurological diseases, and possibly, according to the World Health Organization, a probable cancer agent. In 2013, food residue was up from 20 parts per million to 40 parts per million. Animal feed in the United States with GM alfalfa, which I understand is now being grown in the Rio Grande Valley, can be up to 400 parts per million. In Albuquerque, level of concern for water is set at 6 parts per million. Clean Water Act, as far as I know, doubled this from just a decade ago, from 3 parts per million to 6 as allowable concern. We do not currently show it up, as according to the data sheet that I saw, that we're reaching at the level of concern of 6 parts per million. But I just want to go and say that this is a cumulative effect on a human body, whether it's coming from food or water. And so it is a level of concern because today, 185 million pounds are being applied versus 90 million pounds in 2001. Half of it is applied to non-farming use, such as commercial, government, and residential landscaping. And if it reaches our water supplies, for example, it's not just an impact on us, but these types of pesticides, herbicides can contribute up to about 42% of an invertebrate kill. So to me, when they find that the Institute of Environmental Assessment and Water Research in Barcelona, Spain, in 2011, in the Annals of Bioanalytical Chemistry, found that this is coming in at levels in groundwater in their area of up to 2.5 parts per billion, I start asking myself, how long will it take before it reaches our groundwater supplies here in our area? And from that standpoint, then, I think your policy to err on the part of caution would be that annual tests be taken at the north and south diversion channels, water intakes into the river, which we use the river as a groundwater recharge in the area, and a warning to users for proper application throughout the entire area, and maybe even banning the substance here in our city, just from a long-term concern.
Thank you.
I will leave with you 2 articles here, one on glyphosate and celiac disease. The other one is a generic one on toxicity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our last speaker?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. With that, let's move to announcements. The first announcement is that the next scheduled meeting is June 17th, 2015 at 5 p.m. in the Vincent E. Griego Chambers. And
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take it to Mr. Sheen, but I wanted to just make sure that we've heard from a lot of the audience today and members. I don't know if they were able to sign up for the legislation or not. Were they given an opportunity to do that? Were you folks given an opportunity to sign up for this item? You do have that opportunity, so I'm not sure why.
Councilor Garduño, I don't believe so. Per the Water Authority rules, I think that there's Mr. Sanchez, would you explain it first?
Councilor Garduño, I believe they spoke to this item in public comment. Our public comment rules are general public comment and public comment for financial policy matters.
I think what Mr. Sanchez is saying, you did have an opportunity to speak on this in public comment, and you did speak on this in public comment. Would you raise your hands, those of you who have spoken, that you spoke in public comment on this subject? Those of you who spoke on this in public comment, please raise your hands. Thank you.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Councilor Garduño.
May I ask a light question? Those who wanted to speak to this item but didn't have an opportunity, thinking that they might be able to ask it at this time, would you raise your hand? So something is wrong, and we need to advertise these arcane rules a little bit better. Most people are used to being able to speak to an issue in legislation at the time that it's presented, not at some time that we conveniently carve out. And I'd like to have someone research that. I think we have, actually the staff lawyer is not here tonight, but.
Madam Chairman, I move deferral of the bill.
I'll second that. That'll give everyone the opportunity to speak at this at the next meeting. There's a motion and a second for deferral. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed?
No.
We just voted to defer this so everyone would have an opportunity to speak who wanted to speak. There was a 2 votes to defer to give you that opportunity, 3 votes to not defer. So this will be heard tonight. So moving forward, Councilor Garduño, would you? I'm sorry, ma'am? All right, let's ask for a motion to suspend the rules.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Garduño, or Commissioner Amell.
I think we're talking about 2 people, which is probably a total of what?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. And maybe what you could do is suspend the rules, and for 2 minutes each, that's 4 minutes, to allow the 2 people to speak. I move that we suspend the rules. I guess, I don't know how many people.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules for the 2 people who did not get to speak, to have the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes each. That would be a total of 2 minutes each. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Opposed? Motion
Well,
carried.
I'm opposed because the numbers are wrong. I saw 4 hands go up.
Please hold up your hands. Those of you who held up your hands before.
Who wanted to speak but didn't
There
get
are
an
2
opportunity.
people out.
There are 3.
Okay. Please give your names to the clerk up in front, and let's give you each 2 minutes.
Madam Chair, do we need to amend the motion to allow the 3 people to speak 2 minutes?
If you'd like, yes.
So moved?
There's a motion and a second to amend that suspension of the rules to include 3 people. Thank you.
Vote?
I'm sorry. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Yes, please. Give us your name, please, for the record, so since we don't have it in front of us.
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Skirman, a resident of Albuquerque for 23 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for suspending the rules. Thank you, Councilor Garduño, for speaking up for the people that got here too late to sign up. Very briefly, I just want to say that my understanding is that Sandia National Labs decades ago started storing radioactive waste in unlined pits, and that they're threatening the aquifer, and that their solution is to throw dirt on it. And I urge you to not approve a plan like that. That doesn't make me feel safe for current residents or future generations. And I understand that people who know more about it than I do, like Citizen Action New Mexico, recommends we excavate. And so I urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker is?
Marla Painter.
Thank you, ma'am.
I've been working on radioactive waste disposal issues since about 1986, mostly in Nevada. But I've been here for 18 years, and I've followed this issue for all of those 18 years. And I understand how the DOE works, and I understand that if local government does not step in and insist that they behave in responsible ways, they get away with some really irresponsible and sometimes devastating results. I know this from monitoring the defense waste disposal sites all over this country, and I know that the lives that have been lost, the water that's been ruined, and if you're not educated about it, I really hope that you all will educate yourselves. It's a long and sorry legacy. This project has been controversial for many years, and much of the truth has been put under the ground and not revealed to the public. And it's only because of small, gritty grassroots groups like Citizen Action that anybody in this county or in this state knows anything about this. We can't afford to lose any more clean groundwater. And this, the loss of groundwater to radioactive waste would really be a tragedy. So please look at this seriously. Don't take it as some fringe anti-nuke group's issue. It is a very serious environmental issue in this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peter. We have one more speaker.
Yes. Bring this down to short. My name is Rosemary Blanchard, and I am a resident of Albuquerque. And I would encourage you, I am a grandmother of 2 very little residents here in Albuquerque and a mother and a mother-in-law of 2 others. And it matters tremendously whether we take care of our water over the long haul and our ground over the long haul. And I would ask you to please do everything possible to protect our water from radioactive waste. I worked in the Navajo Nation for a number of years, and I saw reports that shocked me because they were so callous at the federal level. I sat in a committee meeting where we were planning how to provide water to the Navajos who'd been relocated to the New Lands chapter. And they had to dig artesian wells because due to the spill out at Church Rock in the early 70s, the aquifer was radioactive. And when I, representing the Division of Education, said, "Have you told Sanders School District?" I had officials from the federal government tell me that the law did not require them to tell the Sanders School District that the water was radioactive. It only required them to provide safe water to the houses. I have seen reports from the Indian Health Service saying that the ranchers along that aquifer should be told that they can raise their sheep, but they shouldn't eat them. This is the kind of protection that we get from the federal government when it comes to honesty about radioactivity in our water supply. So we are reliant utterly on you at our city and county level to protect us from the federal dishonesty that could jeopardize our water. And then the people who have misinformed us will be retiring someplace else, not here.
Thank you, Ms. Blanchard. I think that, Councilor Gardenia, we're ready to hear Mr. Sheen.
Yes, why don't we do that? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. The resolution that's been in discussion a lot tonight, it's entitled "Requesting the U.S. Department of Energy to respond to claims regarding high-level waste in the mixed waste landfill at the Sandia National Laboratory." This resolution, at the request of Councilor Garduño at the February meeting of this body, following public comment from Mr. Dave McCoy of Citizen Action New Mexico, who brought to the attention of this body and has brought to the attention of the Water Protection Advisory Board the potential for higher level waste at the mixed waste landfill and metallic sodium, which is a combustible material that exists within the mixed waste landfill, but has not previously been reported by the DOE. This resolution requests that the DOE speak to the Water Protection Advisory Board on the claims that Citizen Action has made, and in a manner appropriate, have the Water Protection Advisory Board report to this body.
Thank you, Mr. Sheen. Are there any questions? Councilor Gardenia.
If someone else, go ahead.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm assuming that, or at least I was told that that you had some changes, or you edited portions of the original. There was an original document.
Madam Chair and Commissioner O'Malley, there was a document and a list, proposed resolution from Citizen Action at the February meeting. We've got some input from the Water Protection Advisory Board, asking to get the DOE side of the story for the claims, because the action with the original proposed language was to have mixed waste landfill excavated and have this board push for that.
Okay, and at this point, you're saying that the U.S. Department of DOE is saying that these assertions are not true?
At this point.
Or they haven't said anything?
At
maybe?
this point, they have not responded.
They have not-
New Mexico Environment Department has presented to the Water Protection Advisory Board and has stated that only low-level waste exists within the mixed waste landfill. High-level waste that came from the lab during research projects or maybe there or from other places were put in other storage.
Okay, so, so you have the paragraph, be it resolved, that the U.S. Department respond to the assertions at a future meeting of WPA and follow up as appropriate. The only concern I have with this is it's a future meeting. It doesn't really talk about any sort of timeline. Is it, I mean, that's sort of like very open. It's pretty vague. And that would be the concern that I had, that maybe there needs to be a response within so many days or so many months or something. So that a future meeting could be any meeting in the future. That would be the only concern I would have. I think it's too vague.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Councilor Gardino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I concur with Commissioner O'Malley. And I would also add that the Department of Energy report to this body also. I have no problem with them reporting to the WPAB, but there's no reason why they shouldn't respond to this board also. And I would ask that a further resolution or resolve be added so that that would be reflected. And I don't know if that has to be in the form of a amendment tonight or some other way to make sure that that happens. And I ask staff if that's what can happen.
Madam Chair, Councilor Gardino, if that's your intent, we'd suggest an amendment to the bill.
Okay.
And along those lines, the staff would suggest an amendment to the bill. Along those lines, Mr. Sanchez, would that be a floor amendment or would that be a deferral and a rewrite and do this?
Madam Chair, Councilor Gardino, I think that's a fairly simple amendment. You can just do it.
And I could ask that what Commissioner O'Malley mentioned, that have some definite timeline, plus end the water authority.
3 months.
I think 3 months would be a reasonable time frame.
Okay.
If that's the intent of the sponsor, we can take that as an amendment and put that into the record.
Okay.
Did you all hear that? If that's the intent of the sponsor, we would put that as an amendment and have it in the minutes and make that happen. Councilor Gardino, would you like to make a motion to do that amendment?
I move that we make that amendment to the present resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Councilor Gardino? Yeah. Mr. Perry.
I don't understand. I'm reading the last line, but it says direct the WPAB to request a presentation and response from the U.S. Department of Energy to the assertions at a future meeting. I understand the timing response about putting in 90 days, I guess, is what we're proposing, but doesn't it already have a request that DOE give the presentation? I don't know why.
To WPAB, but not to the Water Authority. And I want to make sure that they do it to the Water Authority also. We are ultimately the folks, entrusted.
All right. There's been an motion and a second on that amendment. Councilor Gardino, should we vote on this as amended?
Well, I guess we need to vote on the amendment.
We did.
Okay.
We voted on
Okay.
the amendment.
So we're back on the bill, I guess.
There's a motion and a second to for the bill as amended. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries on a unanimous vote. We next are going to R15-8. Mr. Roth, would you like to discuss this one?
Madam Chair, members of the board, this was presented at the last meeting in full detail.
You're going to have to yell into it, Mr. Roth. Sorry.
This resolution was presented at the last meeting. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Mr. Roth? Therefore, I move approval of R15-8. All those in favor say yes? No, thanks. All those in favor say yes? Opposed? Motion carries. Next is R15-11. Ms. Uhas.
Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you, Frank. This resolution proposes a change to our current rebate for trees. Currently, customers can receive up to 25% off the cost of tree care, such as tree trimming, irrigation, fertilization, and disease treatment, up to $100 annually for residential customers, and up to $500 annually for non-residential customers. This resolution proposes to include the purchase of new xeric trees listed in the Xeriscape Guide to the program. Albuquerque is losing its tree canopy due to drought, landscaping changes, aging trees, and the wrong type of trees having been planted. This rebate would give the Water Authority the opportunity to influence the type of tree canopy for decades to come. It does take water to plant new trees, but grown trees provide water conservation savings with their shade.